So, will President Trump resort to using his presidential prerogative powers? Will he choose to declare martial law, mobilize military forces to take out the enemy, and investigate the truth of the election? Personally, I think Trump does intend to do so and is already laying the necessary groundwork and sending out signals step by step. What are these signals? There are at least 6 signals that indicate President Trump is preparing for a military counterattack. Signal 1 was the declaration of a national emergency in 2018. As we mentioned previously, Trump signed an executive order on September 12, 2018, declaring a state of emergency in response to foreign powers interfering in the US domestic elections. Once people, institutions, or companies at home or abroad are found to be involved in interfering in the US elections, the US government can block the assets of these people and organizations. This emergency proclamation or declaration is still in effect today. Moreover, the executive order requires the Director of National Intelligence to submit a report to the President within 45 days of the election, explaining the interference of foreign forces in the election. Voting day this year was November 3rd, so December 18th is the deadline of the report submission. Once President Trump obtains the report regarding foreign and domestic interference in the election, he will have the evidence he needs to go after the fraudulent groups. Signal 2, replacement of the Secretary of Defense and direct command of Special Forces. After the election, President Trump announced the removal of the Secretary of Defense and replaced him with Chris Miller, Director of the National Counterterrorism Center. Not only did Miller have a military and counterterrorism background, he also immediately announced that he would require the special operations to report directly to him, instead of through the original bureaucratic channels. Why bypass the original channels? One plausible explanation could be that President Trump has already planned to eliminate and bypass the spies and moles inside the government in order to directly mobilize the Special Operations Forces for special tasks when necessary. So he cannot leak the information in advance to avoid letting the deep state's dark forces know. Signal 3, 82nd Airborne Division reveals the storm is coming. On December 7th, President Trump announced to the public that big things were about to happen. On the next day, December 8th, the Texas Attorney General announced the indictment of the disputed 4 states, accusing them of unconstitutional election procedures. On the same day, the 82nd Airborne Division, a well-known U.S. Armed Forces unit, posted an article on Facebook with only 4 short words, quote, "A storm is coming." Attached to the article were a number of training photos of the 82nd Airborne Division. The following day, the 82nd Airborne Division issued another article saying, quote, "This will remain the land of the free so long as it is the home of the brave." Obviously, this passage is quoted from the last line of the American national anthem, "The land of the free and the home of the brave." The implication is that the 82nd Division will fight for American freedom. This kind of messaging is quite rare for the usually conservative military. Signal 4 is the classification of the election as coup and a crime for the first time. While President Trump has spoken about widespread election fraud many times, it's only recently that he's implied that it's underscored by a highly orchestrated coup plot. On December 10th, President Trump cited a US media report on Twitter in which an interviewee said, quote, "The fact that our country is being stolen, a coup is taking place in front of our eyes." Also on December 13th, President Trump tweeted publicly that the swing states in dispute could not illegally certify their election results, otherwise they were, quote, "committing a severely punishable crime." Essentially, President Trump is escalating the classification of this election fraud step by step, from fraud to coup d'etat and crime. While fraud may represent a deception of the people and a violation of national law, a coup d'etat equates to something far more serious: treason against the country. This gives more justification to President Trump potentially using the military to investigate, arrest, and charge these criminals. Signal 5, President Trump visited West Point as a possible symbol of his future alliance with the military. On December 12th, a large number of Americans held a rally in Washington, D.C. to show their support for President Trump and call for Stop the Steal. Curiously, Trump did not make a personal appearance that day, but instead took a helicopter to the United States Military Academy, West Point, in New York, to watch the annual Army-Navy football game. President Trump arrived at West Point and was warmly welcomed by the Army and Navy cadets. Even though this is the third year in a row that President Trump has attended the game, it could be more than a coincidence that with the air thick with tensions of the election, President Trump still flew there in person. I think that President Trump's visit to West Point is to deliberately show his rivals that while you have already controlled the DOJ, the FBI, the CIA, etc., the military is now fighting alongside me in the Patriots camp. It also signals that President Trump has been preparing to use his presidential prerogative power step by step. Signal 6. A mysterious code word appeared at both West Point and in Washington. On the day of President Trump's trip to West Point, an obscure and mysterious symbol was displayed on one of the 4 helicopters that were deployed to West Point. On the tail of the first helicopter was a skull symbol and the number 659. A number of Trump-watching netizens quickly identified this as a code used by President Trump's secret team. 659 refers to the number 659 post sent by the secret team 2 years ago. Of course, we can't name the secret team because it is like that other sensitive word, deep state, and will be heavily censored. The post mentions the president freeing the good people and includes the words Freedom Day and light. And most intriguing of all, the phrase, quote, "the shot heard around the world." Curiously, Trump's former National Security Advisor, General Flynn, who was in Washington, D.C. that day to speak to the crowd, also mentioned, quote, "the shot heard around the world." Too many coincidences could mean plans and arrangements made behind the scenes.